بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم لا سهلا إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا ربي زدني علما اللهم انفعني بما علمتني وعلمني ما ينفعني ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. We start with the name of Allah. We ask that He makes learning the Quran easy for us. We ask that He increases us in our knowledge. And we ask that whatever knowledge He grants us, He makes it beneficial, useful knowledge. And we ask that He accepts the small efforts that we are making in His path. Ameen. Yesterday, we went through the Shadda. Let me just go to it. So we went through the Shadda yesterday, and we went through the rule of the Ghunna. We mentioned that when you have a meme with a Shadda or a Noon with a Shadda, then you're going to hold onto the sound, and you are going to apply a strong nasal sound onto the meme and Noon. Excuse me. So that's what we went through yesterday. Unfortunately, I didn't get many voice notes, so I'm not sure how it went, but hopefully, inshallah, is something that everyone understood. It wasn't too difficult. But inshallah, today we are going to go through quite a few things. It's going to be quite an intense lesson. So hopefully, inshallah, everyone's well prepared. So without further ado, we'll just make a start. So today, the goal is to go through 3 new rules of Tajweed. We've covered pretty much everything in terms of the foundation, in terms of what we need for reading the Quran, in terms of how to pronounce the letters, what all the different vowels are, things like that. We have a very, very solid foundation right now. So the rest of this week's classes, we are going to basically go through quite a few rules. So inshallah, that's going to be the plan for today, for tomorrow, and inshallah also Thursday. So hopefully, inshallah, everyone's well prepared for this. The first rule that we are going to go through today is the rule of the lam in the word Allah. Okay, so this rule is quite straightforward, not too difficult. So when we say the word Allah, we have to look at the lam, at that word, because that lam has a rule associated with it. Okay, so the lam in the word Allah in the Quran will either be light or heavy. Okay, light or heavy. And now this is very, very similar to a letter that we are already quite familiar with, the letter Ra. We know that the Ra is sometimes light and sometimes heavy. Other letters are either always light or always heavy, but the Ra is a particular case that it depends on what the vowel is on top of the Ra. If the Ra has a fatha or a dhamma, then the Ra will be heavy. And if the Ra has a kasra, then the Ra will be light. So that's what we already know about the letter Ra. And now what about the letter Lam? And this is specifically in the word Allah. Okay, when we see the lam anywhere else, there's not going to be any rule associated with it, but the lam in the word Allah, this is where this rule will apply. So the rule is that whenever we see the word Allah in the Quran, then we need to look at the letter before it. Okay, and if the letter before it has a fatha or a dhamma, then the lam in the word Allah will be heavy. And if the letter before it has a kasra, then the lam will be light. Okay. Now, this might sound quite confusing, but again, the theory always sounds confusing. The actual practice is usually a bit more simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just write down a few words, and hopefully, inshallah, it might make things a little bit more clear. A few words slash phrases. So the first one I'm going to write is Allahu Akbar. This is something that I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with. We say this whenever we start our salah. The next one I'm going to write is Bismillah. The next one I'm going to write is Alhamdulillah. The next one I'm going to write is Subhanallah. Okay. The next one I'm going to write is Inna Lillahi. So Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilayhi Raji'un. I'm sure a lot of you guys understand this phrase. So these are just a few phrases, Arabic phrases that we say in our everyday life with the word Allah in it. Okay. So if we look at it, the word Allah, I'm just going to highlight it in each one. So there it is over here. There it is over here. There it is over here. Oops. In Subhanallah, it's over there. And in Inna Lillah, it's over here. Okay, so the word Allah has been highlighted in each of these words. Now, the way it sounds in each word is not always the same. So if we think about it, look at Allahu Akbar. The way we say Allah in this one, the lam has that heavy sound. It has that heavy quality that we normally associate with the heavy letters. In here, in Bismillah, our mouth is wide open when we say the word Allah. Bismillah. We don't say Bismillah, we say Bismillah. In Alhamdulillah, again, it's quite light. In Subhanallah, it's more heavy. And in Inna Lillah, it's light. Okay, so this is just kind of like a quick example just to demonstrate how the lam in the word Allah will change depending on what the letters are before it. Now, obviously, I didn't write this in Arabic, I just wrote in English. But what we'll do is we'll go through a few examples just to highlight the point a bit more. So hopefully, inshallah, everyone has kind of a basic understanding of what I'm talking about. The sound of the lam in the word Allah will change, and it always it depends. The sound depends on the letter before it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a few of these words, inshallah, and hopefully, if you've got any questions, then you can just ask. So if we look at this one over here, we see the word Allah over here. So we need to look at the letter before the lam. So the lam is this one over here. This is the lam. And the letter before it is not this alif. This alif doesn't have any vowel on it. It's actually this hamza over here. This hamza over here is the letter before the lam. Now, if we look at it, the hamza has a fatha on top. That means that this lam is going to be heavy, okay? Because whenever we see the word Allah, if the letter before has a fatha or a dhamma, then the lam is going to be heavy. And if the letter before has a kasra, then it's going to be like very, very similar to the letter ra. So this one, we will read it like this. So we would read ya, sha, yasha, Allah, yasha, Allahu, yasha, Allahu. Okay, you have to keep the hamza light, but you have to make the lam in the word Allah heavy. Okay. So that's how you would read it. You would make the lam heavy. You won't say yasha Allahu. You will say yasha Allahu. Note that you have to keep the hamza light, but you're making the lam heavy. Okay. We'll do this one over here. So in this one.
So, Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Just a quick question. When you make the lam heavy,
Yep.
what should you be doing with the tongue? Where should it be?
So
what is it?
Mm-hmm. So as you're saying the word lam, as you're saying la, basically what you have to do is just raise the back end of your tongue. And if you can't do that, then just round your mouth. So instead of saying Allah, say Allah. Try that, Allah, like that. So that's how you want to do it. So the way to do it is to just raise the back end of your tongue, just with all the other heavy letters. But if you're unable to do that, then just round your mouth, inshallah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So if we look at this word over here, we have the word Allah. Now it looks a little bit different than these two, but this is the word Allah, obviously with humma as well at the end. Now this lam here will either be light or heavy, and we need to look at the letter before it to identify if it's going to be light or heavy. Now if we look at the letter before, it's not this and it's not this, because these don't have any vowels on them. We have the kaf, and this kaf has a fatha on it. So that means we are going to read this lam heavy. Okay. Now if we just do a quick check of the other rules, we see that there's going to be a qalqala here on this ba, and we are going to do a ghunna on this mim. Okay. So the way to read this, we would read, and we're also going to stretch this ha. Also, one more thing I didn't do it is you're going to stretch this lam too. So you're going to read subha, subhana, subhana, kallah, subhanakallah, humma, subhanakallahumma. Okay, so you won't read subhanakallahumma. You have to make the lam heavy. Subhanakallahumma. Now, those are examples where the lam in the word Allah is read heavy. Okay. How about when it's light? Well, we'll only read it light if the letter before it has a kasra. Okay. So these letters had fatha, and if you look at this one, there's a dhamma, and there are countless examples. But whenever the letter before has a fatha or a dhamma, then it's going to be heavy. Now, if the letter before has a kasra, then it's going to be light. And again, this is very, very similar to the ra, where we know that with the ra, if the ra has a fatha or a dhamma, the ra is heavy. If the ra has a kasra, it's light. So it's very, very similar to the ra. Now, if we look at this one here, we have the word Allah. Okay. Now, to find out if this lam is going to be heavy or light, we just need to look at the letter before it. And the letter before it is this noon over here. And this noon has a kasra. That means the lam in the word Allah over here is going to be light. We aren't going to apply that heaviness. We're just going to keep our mouth wide open when we read it. So we're still going to stretch it, but we're not going to make it heavy. And and also we have this kasra before ya sakin over here. So the way we would read this is dinillah, dinillahi, 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 dinillahi. So that's the difference between the two. So we have, whenever it's light, your mouth is going to be wide open when you say the lam. Okay, and whenever it's heavy, then you're going to have that roundness that you have with all the other heavy letters. And again, it's only going to be heavy whenever the letter before it has a dhamma, and it's only going to be light whenever the letter before has a kasra. And again, this is only to do with the word Allah. Okay, any other word, any other lam, you are just going to keep it light as normal. Okay, only in the word Allah will this rule apply. So this is the first rule that we just wanted to go over today. If you want to make a note, write it down, inshallah, something to memorize. Make sure that you remember this from now on, inshallah, going forward. So the lam in the word Allah, it will either be heavy or light, and it's going to be heavy if it's a fatha or a dhamma before it, and it's going to be light if there's a kasra before it. Just want to gauge how is everyone feeling at the moment with this rule. A 1 if you understand it, a 5 if you're a bit unsure about it, you'd like me to repeat something, or if you've got a question. Again, we're going to go over quite a few rules today. So if at any point there's something that you don't understand, please do interrupt. I'm more than happy to just repeat things if you need it. So yeah, don't worry about, if you don't understand something, I'm happy to repeat it, inshallah. Okay, so yeah, so this rule quite straightforward, not too difficult. All you have to do is just remember it's very, very similar to the letter ra, where if the ra has a fatha or a dhamma, it's heavy, and if it's a kasra, then it's going to be light. So that's just what you want to keep in mind with this rule. So what we're going to do now, we've got about 40 minutes left, inshallah. We're going to start going over the rules of the noon sakin and tanween. So I didn't mention at the start of the week that this week is going to be a lot of theory, a lot of intense work. We're going to learn a lot of rules, inshallah. I mentioned it last week too. So inshallah, hopefully everyone's ready. So the noon sakin and tanween. I mentioned last week when we went over the tanween that there are rules associated with the tanween, that there are particular rules associated with those vowels. So uh, we're just going to go over these rules, inshallah, today and tomorrow. Now, there are 4 rules associated with the Noon Sakin and Tanween. Okay, 4 rules. We have Idhar, Iqlab, Idgham, and Ikhfa. Now, what do these mean and what are these rules? And you probably have like 50 million questions right now. Don't worry about it. Inshallah, what we're going to do is we'll just go through them one by one. I'm going to explain each one. I'm going to take my time with it. And if you have any questions at any point, you'll be more than welcome to ask, inshallah. So today, what we are going to do is we're going to go over 2 of these 4 rules. We're going to go over Idhar and Iqlab. That's the plan for today. So we've gone over the rule of the lam in the word Allah, and the plan is the rest of this lesson we'll be going over Idhar and Iqlab. Okay. So the first one that I want to go over is Idhar. Okay, this is the first rule of the Noon Sakin and Tanween. Okay, so so whenever we see a Noon Sakin or a Tanween, okay, whenever we see a Noon Sakin or a Tanween, we are going to apply a particular rule. Okay, so a Noon Sakin, if you're unsure what I'm talking about, is just a letter Noon with a Sakin on top. Okay, and the Tanween are these things over here, the Fathatain, Kasratain, Dhammatain, just in case you forgot. So whenever we see any of these things in the Quran, then we are going to apply a rule. Okay, we are going to apply one of these 4 rules. Okay, so that's what we're just going over today. So the first rule is Idhar. Now, Idhar means clear. Okay, so this is just going to be a hint of what we're going to do. So whenever we see a Noon Sakin or a Tanween, okay, and we see after the Noon Sakin or Tanween any of these 6 letters, then what we are going to do is we are going to read the Noon Sakin or Tanween clearly. So right now, I feel like I'm not explaining this as best as I could be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start again, okay? So Bismillah. So the Noon Sakin or Tanween. The Noon Sakin and Tanween has 4 rules associated with it, okay? So whenever we see the Noon Sakin or Tanween, we are going to apply a rule. So what I'm going to do is just go back to my Word document, delete this, Noon Sakin Tanween. So if you're making notes, write this down. So whenever we see a Noon Sakin or Tanween, we are going to stop and look at the next letter, okay? So that's the first step, okay? The first step of any of these 4 rules is to stop and look at the next letter, okay? So the first rule that we are going to go over is Idhar. And whenever we see a Noon Sakin or Tanween, we are going to stop and look at the next letter. If the letter is either Hamza, Ha, Ain, Ha, Ghain, Kha, then what we are going to do is we are going to read the Noon Sakin or Tanween clearly. What does that mean? Well, it means that we're not going to change anything, okay? We're just going to read it as it looks on the page. We're not going to change anything at all. Now, you might be thinking, Ustad, why is this a rule if we're not going to change anything? Well, the reason why is these other 3 rules, we are going to do something with the Noon Sakin or Tanween. So the Idhar rule is a rule in itself because we are doing something different from the other 3. So I like to think of this rule as the control rule. If any of you are like scientists or you're into your science and science experiments, you would know that whenever you're conducting a science experiment, you need to, whenever you change a variable, you have to have a control group so that you can compare the differences. So I like to think of this rule as the control rule, where we're not doing anything, we're just keeping everything the same, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a few of these examples, inshallah, and kind of explain what I'm talking about. So if we look at this first example here, okay, this first example. we have a noon sakin, okay? This meme connected to the noon, okay? So now we know that there's a noon sakin. We know that we have to stop and look at the next letter, okay? So the next letter after this noon sakin is the hamza, okay? So hamza is part of these 6 letters, hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. What that means is we are going to apply the idhar rule. We are going to read this noon sakin clearly. We are not going to make any changes at all, okay? So we're going to read min, ah, min, li, min, ahli, min, ahli, min, ahli. We aren't making any changes at all to the sound of the noon, okay? And that is because the letter after the noon sakin is one of these 6 letters, hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. And if you have a keen eye, then you'll notice that these are the letters of the throat. These 6 letters are the letters of the throat. So we can say that the idhar rule is, so the idhar rule, if after noon sakin or tanween, any of the letters of the throat appear, the noon sakin tanween will be read clearly with no change. And just want to write after it, think of it like the control rule. When I say control rule, I'm just saying that it's the rule where we aren't really doing anything with the noon sakin or tanween. And you're going to understand what I'm talking about when we come to the other rules, inshallah. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to go through a few more examples, inshallah, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So if we look at this one here, this is hopefully a word that everyone recognizes, Surah Fatiha. We have a noon sakin over here. Yeah, we have this hamza connected to the noon. We also have this ayn connected to the mim. Now, we know now that because there's a noon sakin, we have to stop and look at the next letter. Okay, this is going to be for every single rule. Whenever we see a noon sakin tanween, you have to stop and look at the next letter. So in this case, the next letter is ayn, and ayn is a letter of the throat. It's one of these 6 letters. That means that the sound of the noon is going to be clear with no change. So we are going to read an, am, ta, an'amta, an'amta, an'amta. So it's quite straightforward. We aren't changing anything. We're just reading whatever is on the page. The main thing with this rule to keep in mind are the 6 letters, okay? You have to memorize these 6 letters. This is the most important thing with the rule. The rule itself is quite straightforward, quite basic. There's nothing really going on with the rule, but what you have to do is you have to memorize these 6 letters, okay? So this is going to be part of tonight's homework, is make sure you memorize these 6 letters, okay? And these 6 letters are associated with the idhar rule. So tomorrow, if I ask someone, if I say, what is the idhar rule and what are the letters associated with it, then you have to be able to tell me what the rule is, and you have to be able to read these 6 letters, hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. What I want to do is, before I move on, is I want to just look at it with the tanween. So if we look at this one here, actually I'll do this one, it's a little bit shorter. So if we look at this one here, we have this lam is a stretch letter, and now we have a tanween. The tanween, this dammatain on the meme, we have a tanween. So we need to make sure that we stop and look at the next letter. Whenever we see a noon sakin or tanween, then we have to stop and look at the next letter, okay? So the reason we need to stop and look at the next letter is so that we know which rule we are going to apply, because there are 4 different rules. Today we're learning these 2. So the reason we stop and look at the next letter is to decide which rule we are going to apply. So in this case, we have the tanween on the mim. So we need to stop and look at the next letter. In this case, it's this one here. Okay, so this letter is the letter ha. So that means we are going to apply the idhar rule because ha is part of the letters of the throat. That means we are going to read this tanween clearly with no change at all. We are just going to read whatever is on the page. So we are going to read sa, la, sala, mun, salamun, hi, salamun, hi, ya, salamun, hiya, salamun, hiya, salamun, hiya. Okay, so that's basically the idhar rule. The main thing again to keep in mind with this rule is just memorize the 6 letters of the throat, and now you'll know that whenever you see a noon sakin or a tanween, if any of these letters of the throat appear, then you're just going to read it as it is. Does anyone have any questions at the moment regarding this rule? If you're confused about anything, if you understand the rule, just a 1 in the chat. If you're a little bit confused, a 5. And again, I'm more than happy to go over the rule again. I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page before we move on. Okay, so yes, so the main thing again, just with this rule, make sure you memorize these letters and memorize it in this order. Memorize it: Hamza, Ha, Ain, Ha, Ghain, Kha. The reason why you want to memorize it in that order is the Hamza and Ha are bottom of the throat, Ain, Ha, middle of the throat, Ghain, Kha, top of the throat. So if you memorize it in that order, it's going to be a lot more easier to remember, inshallah, because you'll just associate with the particular makhraj. So make sure you memorize these 6 letters: Hamza, Ha, Ain, Ha, Ghain, Kha, and memorize it in that order. The reason I'm asking you to memorize it is, it's going to make your life a lot more easier when we learn these other rules. There are also going to be groups of letters to memorize. So if you memorize it now, then it's going to make your life easier in the future in terms of learning to identify and apply the rules, inshallah. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to the second rule. So the second rule that I wanted to go over today is iqlab. So that's what we'll do now, inshallah. So the rule iqlab, this is again a rule of the noon sakin tanween. Okay, now iqlab means to change. Okay, change, and that's going to be a hint of what we are going to do with this rule. Okay, so if you want to write iqlab equals change, then that's completely fine. So iqlab again is going to have the same first step. So it's to do with the noon sakin tanween. So whenever we see a noon sakin tanween, we're going to stop and look at the next letter. Okay, so whenever we see a noon sakin or a tanween, and if the next letter is the letter ba, if the letter ba appears, then what we are going to do is we are going to change the sound of the noon into a meme. Okay, I'm just going to do this with a red pen to be a bit more clear. So we are going to change the sound of the noon into a meme, and we are going to apply ghunna on that meme. Okay, so the theory looks a lot more complicated than the actual practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read one of them, and inshallah, hopefully it'll make a lot more sense. So again, iqlab means to change, and this rule is whenever we see the noon sakin or a tanween, and the letter afterwards is the letter ba, then the sound of the noon, we will change it into a meme. Okay, that's the first step. We are going to change the sound of the noon into a meme, and then we are going to apply ghunna. Okay, so the first step. So if we look at if we look at this one here, this example here, we have a noon sakin, min. Okay, so we need to stop and look at the next letter. I want you guys to, really just, get this into your head. Just make sure that whenever you see a noon sakin tanween, you have to stop, you have to pause and look at the next letter, because there is definitely going to be a rule associated with it. So you have to just take your time now going forward, that whenever you see a noon sakin tanween, stop and look at the next letter.
I just ask,
So
the noon,
yeah,
there's no valve on this, so how would you recognize if that's a silent letter or you actually it's a joint letter?
that's a fantastic question, actually. With this particular script, it's just like this. But with the script I will be using for Quran, you won't need to worry about it. And with the homework, inshallah, you won't need to worry about it. Just bear with it for now, inshallah. But when I mention the homework tonight, you'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah. But in the homework, there will be a sakin on the noon. So on the homework, there will be a sakin on the noon, and you will definitely know that there's a noon sakin. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's just this particular script that with this booklet, the sakin is missing whenever there's a rule involved. We saw it with the stretch letters, and now we're seeing it again, that with this rule, the sakin on the noon is missing. So it's supposed to help people who use the script to apply the rules, but we won't need it. And when we read Quran, everything's going to be there. So don't worry about it. Yeah. So we have a noon sakin. So we need to stop and look at the next letter, and we see that the letter is the ba. Okay. So what we are going to do is we're going to change the noon sound. Okay. So the noon sound is that kind of like an N. Yeah. We're going to change that noon sound into a meme sound. So we're going to change it from an N to an M in a way. So instead of reading min, we are going to read mim. Mim. Okay. So we're changing the sound of the noon into a sound of a meme. So instead of reading min, we are reading mim. And then the next thing is we are going to apply the ghunna. Okay, so we're going to apply ghunna on that meme sound. Okay, so instead of reading mim, we're going to read mim, mim, mim. And then we have this ba connected to the ain, so we're going to read ba, mim ba, di, mim ba, di. Okay, so that is the iqlab rule. Okay, I know I've just gone through one example, but hopefully inshallah it makes a little bit more sense. Whenever we see a noon sakin or a tanween and the letter afterwards is the letter ba, this is the most important thing, that we only apply this whenever we see the letter ba afterwards. Then we are going to change the noon sound into a meme sound, and we'll read it, that meme, with the ghunna. What I'll do is I'll go through the other examples. So here in this one, again, this script, the noon sakin is not there, but for the homework it will be there, so don't worry. So here we have this hamza connected to the noon. Okay, so we have a noon sakin, a noon sakin. That means we need to stop and check the next letter. So after the noon, we have the letter ba. That means we are going to apply the iqlab rule. What that means is we will change the sound of the noon into a sound of a meme, and we will apply ghunna on that meme. So we are going to read fa bat فأنبت نا فأنبتنا فأنبتنا. The sound of the noon is completely changed. There is no noon at all, no noon sound at all. You aren't going to read فأنبتنا, no noon sound. It should be changed into a meme sound, and you apply ghunna on that meme. What I'll do is I'll go through this one here. And inshallah, hopefully after this one, it will make a lot of sense. So here we have this noon connected to the scene. we have a tanween here on the ayn. We have the fathatain on the ayn. That means we need to stop and check the next letter. Okay, that's the first thing. Whenever we see a nun sakin tanween, you have to stop and check the next letter. Okay, so the next letter after this ayn is the letter ba. That means we are going to apply the iqlab rule. And the iqlab rule states that we are going to change the sound of the noon into a sound of a meme. Now you might be wondering, Ustad, that's a ayn and not a noon. What are you talking about? What are we changing? Well, we have the ayn with the fathatain. Okay, so you have the letter ayn. Okay, and it's got that there. So that is basically the same as saying an. Okay, so that ayn is read an. So that noon sound at the end of it, that's the thing that we are changing. We're keeping the ayn the same. We're not changing anything about the ayn itself. We're just changing the sound at the end. Okay, so instead of reading an, so that little apostrophe is just to indicate that this is a ayn. So instead of reading an, we are going to read am. Okay, so that's what we're changing. Over here, whenever it's a tanween, with the noon sakin, it's easy. You're just changing the noon sound. But with the tanween, what you're changing is the sound at the end of the tanween. So instead of saying an, we are going to say an. And not just that, we are going to put a ghunna on it as well. So we're not just going to say an, we're going to say an, like that. Okay, so that's what is going on with this rule. Okay, so we see the tanween. After the tanween is the ba, so we will apply iqlab. So we're changing the an into an. That's what is going on over here with this rule. And now if we just complete the rest of this, so we have this ba connected to the noon. That's a ghunna. It's also a stretch letter. We have the sad is a heavy letter, and that's about it. So we can now read this. So we're gonna say la nas, fa, la nasfa. And look here, we're applying iqlab. Am, la nasfa am, bin, la nasfa am, bin, na, la nasfa am, bin, na, si, la nasfa am, bin, nasi. So hopefully, inshallah, that makes sense. Just want to gauge how is the class feeling right now with this rule. 1, if you feel okay with this rule. 5, if there's something that you don't understand or you'd like me to repeat, or if you've got a question. Brother Said, what would you like me to repeat? Or you got a question?
A question. You can see the little meme at the top. Is that for all the scripts? That's going to help us out.
No, it won't be there all the time. I think again, it's just with this particular script. I think with the Quran script, it might be there sometimes. It might not be there other times. I'm not sure 100%, but I don't want you guys to rely on this meme to help you apply the rule. The main thing that I want you guys to understand is that it's going to be after a noon sakin or a tanween. And if you see the letter ba, then you're going to change that sound into a meme. It might be there. I think it is there with the script that we'll be using, but I can't say for sure. I can't remember right now just off the top of my head. So I can't say yes or no for that. But memorize the rule and inshallah you'll be okay. Yeah. Brother Shahriya, you've got a question?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ustad. I just wanted to ask, how did you know to connect the ba to the noon? And because there's an alif in between, right? And then is that another alif next to the noon as well? Sorry, this is the, sorry, this is the bottom right. Yeah, that one over there.
This one here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think again, that's just with this script. There's something weird going on here, and to be honest, I don't know what's going on with this line over here, so I can't tell you about that. But I do know that this ba is connected to the noon. But these things, so this thing over here, you don't need to worry about it when we come onto Quran. these kind of things will not be there. And again, things like missing sakins, things like that, you don't need to worry about that. When we come into Quran, whatever is there, we are going to read, and whatever is not there, we are just going to ignore it. Like, it won't affect anything. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. It's just with this particular booklet, it uses the script, and sometimes there are things that are missing that we do read. Sometimes there are things there that we're not really doing anything with. And to be honest, I'm not sure what that is. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. Does that including the alif next to the ba as well? That's connected to it. So that would usually be there.
This alif will be there, but we're connecting the ba with the kasra to the nun. The alif doesn't have anything on it, so we're not going to read anything about it.
Okay.
The ba is connected to the nun here, and that's how we'll just read bin like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about the rule itself, though? Just wondering, do you guys understand this rule, the rule of iqlab? With regards to the rule, if you understand it, just 1. If you don't understand it, just a 5. If you'd like me to repeat it. Again, we are going to go through a lot of rules this week, so it's very, very important that everyone is on the same page before we move on. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to write out this rule, and inshallah, you'll be able to use, you can use this as your notes. So we've gone over izhar, and just a quick reminder of izhar is that after the nun sakin or tanween, if a letter of the throat appears, then we are going to just read it as normal. We're not going to make any change. We're going to read the nun sound clearly. So that's the izhar rule. Now the iqlab rule, if after nun sakin or tanween, the letter ba appears, the nun sound, so I'm just going to do that in quotation marks, this nun sound will be changed into a meme sound, and ghunna will be applied. Okay, so that's the iqlab rule. Okay, this one is also fairly straightforward once you understand what's going on. And again, the only letter to remember with this one is ba. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back to the beginning. So we have the nun sakin tanween rules. There are 4 of them. Okay, we've gone over just right now. We've gone over izhar, and we've gone over iqlab. Okay, so these are 2 of the 4 rules related to nun sakin and tanween. Okay, so the nun sakin or tanween, whenever they appear, we have to stop and look at the next letter. Okay, that's number 1 thing that we need to take from this lesson, is whenever we see a nun sakin tanween, we have to stop and look at the next letter. The letter that appears, that will determine, that will indicate what rule we are going to apply. So the first rule, izhar, is if after the nun sakin or tanween, any of the throat letters appear. So hamza, ha, ain, ha, or ghain, kha, any of those appears, then we are going to read it just clearly, no change at all. Okay, so now that we've gone through iqlab, you can understand why this is a rule, that we aren't making any changes to the nun itself or the nun sound. We're just going to read it normally. Okay, so this rule, I would say this is probably the easiest to apply because you're not doing anything. The only thing to learn with this rule are the 6 letters. So make sure you memorize these 6 letters. That's the most important thing with this rule, is memorizing the 6 letters. Hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. Okay. Brother Said, you got a question?
Yeah, for the nun sakin, the izhar, what about if you get the next letter is, example, like a gym or something?
Yeah, fantastic question. Fantastic question. Inshallah, it will be answered tomorrow. You'll have to wait till tomorrow because there are 2 more rules, idgham and ikhfa, and inshallah, you'll know which rule to apply if you see the letter jim. Yeah. So with the other letters, remaining letters that we haven't gone over yet, they are going to be with idgham and ikhfa. So hopefully, inshallah, that will be tomorrow. Yeah. But just for now, main thing to remember are these two rules. So izhar is we are going to read it clearly, and iqlab is whenever we see the letter ba, whenever we see the letter ba after the noon sakin or tanween, you're going to change the noon sound into a meme sound and apply ghunna. Okay. So my brain is quite fried, and I've just been listening to myself talk. I don't know how you guys are feeling. Your brains must be even worse. But inshallah, hopefully, you guys understood a little bit of what I've said, even though my explanation probably wasn't the best. But yeah, these are the two rules. Inshallah, what we'll do is we'll just have a quick look at the homework, and you'll see what I mean when I was talking about this script being a bit strange and things like that. What we'll do is we'll have a look at the homework. So with the homework, we are going to be using this new booklet. At the end of this lesson, I'm going to send this booklet onto the group, and you'll be using this booklet for the homeworks for this week, inshallah. So this booklet's really, really good. It's got, a lot of good explanations with Tajweed and things like that. And more than that, it's got a lot of examples to practice. So if you look through these contents, we're looking for idhar and iqlab. So over here it's called qalb. Okay. So these are the two rules that we are going to be practicing for the homework. So if you look at it, it's page 80 here, page 64 here. I think if you open it as a PDF file, it's going to be different page number. That page 64 is, the bottom of the page. So if you look at the bottom of the page, this is 4. So if you go to page 64, let me just type in 56, 60. Okay, so 64. So on page 60, so 68 of the booklet, but 64 of the actual booklet, you have the izhar rule. And then on the next page, you have a lot of examples to practice. So if we look at this example page, you're going to see that every sakin is there. Okay. If we just have a look at this one really quickly, the sakin on the noon is there. Okay. So you don't need to worry about, missing sakins or, extra things or things not there. The Quran that we'll be using for, practice next week will be this script. So you don't need to worry about missing sakins and things like that. Yeah. So we have a noon sakin here, followed by the letter ayn. So we are going to apply the izhar rule. So we will read min ba min ibadi min ibadi na min ibadina. Okay, so we're not changing anything with the noon. If we look at one with a tanween, looking at this one here, we have the qaf is the heavy letter, and the qaf is connected to the waw, and now we have a tanween. This meme has a tanween on it, so we need to look at the next letter. The next letter is ha. That means we will apply the izhar rule. All of these ones will be izhar. So we are going to keep the noon sound clear. So we are going to read qaw min ha qawmin ha din qawmin ha din. Okay, and obviously if we were to carry on, then there would be another tanween rule applied with this dal, but obviously we don't know what the next letter is, so we don't know what to do with this tanween. So for the homework, you're going to be the izhar rule, and then also the iqlab rule. I think it was page 80. I'm not sure. So okay, yeah. So if you go down to page 80 of the actual booklet, so if you go on the PDF, it'll be page 84. If you want to like quickly go to it, but on the booklet is page 80. And if you scroll down, you're gonna have a lot of examples. So these are so many examples to practice. You probably won't be able to get through all of them, but even if you do, 2 or 3 or 4, however many you do, make sure that you take your time with it. Make sure that you're really, looking at where to apply the rule, you know, what rules are there that we already know of, this and that. You know, make sure you take your time with everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at this one here. Okay. So if we look at this one here, we have this ra is heavy, and it's also a stretch letter, fatha before alif. And now we have this mim with a tanween, and the tanween is followed by the letter ba. That means we are going to apply the iqlab rule. That means we will change the sound of the noon into a sound of a mim. Okay, instead of reading min, we are going to read mim. So instead of reading min, we are going to read mim, and we're going to put ghunna on it. So we're going to read mim. Okay, and then just to finish off, we have this ra is heavy, and this ra is also heavy. So this would be ki ra, ki ra, mim, ki ra, mim, ba, ki ra, mim, ba, ra, ki ra, mim, ba, ra, ra, ki ra, mim, ba, ra, ra, tin, kiramim bararatin. Okay, so the homework will be practice as much as you can from the idhar rule and the iqlab rule. Memorize the two rules. So memorize these two, and memorize the letters associated. So I wrote down here letters of the throat, but I want you guys to actually memorize what the letters are. So hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. So there's quite a lot to do for tonight, but I did mention that it's going to be intense, and inshallah, you know, the more effort you put in, the more you'll get out of it. So inshallah, it will be definitely worth it to put in as much effort as you can. We are very, very nearly at the end of this course. This week will probably be the most intense week from all 4 weeks. So, you know, put as much effort as you can this week. Whatever effort you've done, you know, in all the previous 2 weeks, bump it up to 100 right now. This week is going to be the most intense. So try to put as much effort as you can in learning the rules, in memorizing them, and in also practicing them. That's what I want from everyone, inshallah, for, you know, this week. Tell yourself that, you know what, this week I'm going to put 100% in, and inshallah at the end of the week you're going to see that you've learned so much and you've covered so much ground, and you'll be very, very proud of yourself, inshallah. So homework, memorize these two rules, idhar and iqlab. Memorize the letters associated with it. So hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha for idhar, letter ba just for iqlab. The reason I'm saying memorize it is tomorrow we're going to go through the other two rules, and there are more letters, more groups of letters, and now it's going to be much more confusing tomorrow, and, you know, in the coming days, you know, because you're going to have much more things to remember. So spend as much time as you can getting comfortable with these right now. Then once you've done that, practice from this booklet, which I will send after this class, as much as you can from idhar and iqlab, and send me some voice notes, inshallah, with pictures of what you've practiced. When you practice, keep up everything that we've done so far. Now, I know that, you know, some of these are quite long. You know, if you look at this one, it's very, very long. You don't need to do all the long ones. Even if you want to do just, you know, this short one, that's fine. Whatever you practice, make sure that you are following the same method, meaning before you attempt it, you're looking at everything. You're not just looking at the rule of, you know, iqlab. You're looking at all the other rules. You're looking at, you know, the heavy letters, the stretch letters, ghunnas, you know, qalqalas, things like that. Look at every single letter and look at every single rule, and make sure that you understand 100% what is going on before you practice it. It's very, very important that you do that. So before I end this class, I just want to do one quick recap of what we've gone over today. I know you might be sick of my voice right now, but just a quick recap, inshallah, we'll end this class. So the first thing we went over today feels like forever. but we actually went over this one today, was the rule of the lam in the word Allah. So this rule, we went over it. We mentioned that in the word Allah, if the letter before the lam has a fatha or a dhamma, then the lam in the word Allah will be heavy. And if the letter before the lam in the word Allah has a kasra, then the lam in the word Allah will be light. Okay, so that's the first rule we went over today. So that's again something to memorize. Make sure you memorize this rule. Make sure you're familiar with it. So whenever you see the word Allah, you have to also slow down and just make sure that you know whether the lam is heavy or light. Then the next thing we went over was idhar, the first of the 4 rules related to nun sakin tanween. We mentioned that idhar is essentially the control group of these 4, where we aren't doing anything. We're just going to keep the sound completely the same. We're not making any change. Nothing's happening. We're just reading it as it is. And the idhar rule will appear whenever any of the throat letters appear after the nun sakin or tanween. So hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. And then we went over the iqlab rule. And this rule is where we're changing the sound of the noon into a sound of a meme, and we are applying ghunna on the meme sound. Okay, and this rule will appear whenever we see the letter ba after the nun sakin tanween. So that's just a quick recap of what we've gone over today. I know it's quite a lot, but inshallah, there's a lot for you guys to practice tonight and tomorrow. So that's going to be the homework. So I will send this booklet straight after this lesson. Practice idhar, practice iqlab, memorize the rules, and get very, very familiar with them, inshallah. That's going to be the homework. Does anyone, just before we end, does anyone have any questions at all? Anything on nun sakin tanween, anything on the lam in the word Allah, anything about idhar, iqlab, anything at all? Does anyone have any questions? If you do, just ask now. Shahriya? Brother Shahriya, do you have a question?
Sorry, bro, that's not me. Someone else has got their hand up, I think. Or I might have done it by accident. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Does anyone have any other questions? If you do have a question, then you can always just message me, inshallah. I'll see everyone tomorrow. Get as much practice as you can tonight, inshallah. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.